So I was at work when I got a phone call from my husband. He was livid. He told me that he was not going to deal with those damn teenagers and that he was going to the bar and that I could deal with them. Well, the damn teenagers were my daughter, who was a freshman in high school, and his son, Skylar, who was a senior in high school. And we had both of them full-time, and neither one of them liked the other one. And apparently somebody had broken a glass in the basement game room, and neither one of them was owning up as to who did it, and neither one of them was cleaning it up. And so that was the situation. So when I got home, the energy in the house was definitely tense. And they had both retreated to their separate corners, their bedrooms, and they were set to defend themselves against one another and against me. So I sat them down at the kitchen table on either side of the kitchen table, and I stood in the middle. Rebecca was on this side. She was a tiny little thing, barely 100 pounds. She had dyed her hair bright red, and she was sitting there with her arms crossed and looking at the ground. And on my right was Skylar, 6'4", thin, real thin, 6'4", long hair. He was gauging his ears. He had a chain that he would wear from his wallet to the belt loop on his very baggy pants. And he too had his arms crossed and he was looking at the floor. Neither one of them wanted to be there. So I started with the truth. I said, all right, guys. I know that neither one of you asked to be part of a blended family. Skylar, you didn't ask for a sister. Rebecca, you did not ask for a brother. You guys didn't want this situation. It was kind of forced upon you. But here it is. And you're going to have to learn how to deal with it. And I looked at Rebecca and I said, you know that you are better off with your stepdad in your life. And she shifted a little bit in her seat and uncrossed her arms and just nodded her head a little bit. And then I looked at Skylar and I said, Skylar, I know that you are better off with me in your life. And he shifted his weight, and he looked up at me, and then he looked back down at the floor, and he said, yeah, so. And I said, so, the two of you are better off with each other in your lives. And so, you gotta learn how to be friends. The two of you are family. And then, to drive home the point, I said to them, now, to each one of them, I said, if your friend had broken that glass, would you have told me, my friend broke that glass, I'm not cleaning it up? And both of them said no, and I said, no, that's right. You would have just cleaned up the glass. I said, and so if the two of you saw each other as friends or allies, we wouldn't be in this situation because you would have just cleaned it up. But here we are. And here's your punishment. And I set down a piece of paper between the two of them with a list of more than a dozen chores. Anything that I could think of that needed to be done around the house, both inside and outside. And I said, there's one list. And the two of you are going to finish everything on that list before the end of the weekend. I don't care who does what, you guys figure it out. And they did. And by Sunday evening, the house was spotless, inside and out. But my intended result didn't happen. The two of them were no closer to being friends or allies. They both retreated to their separate bedrooms, their separate corners, and they were still poised for a fight. Until a couple months later, there was a storm and the power went out. It was after my husband and I were asleep, but before the teenagers had gone to bed, and the two of them found themselves with no lights, and no Xbox, and no TV, and no friends, and no car. They were stuck with each other. And they found candles and cards, and they started sharing stories with one another. And they found out that they had more in common than they had realized before. And when the power came back on, they continued their conversation that became the catalyst for their friendship. Skylar's father and I are no longer married, and so the two of them are technically not family anymore. But Skylar and Rebecca are still friends to this day. And when I look at what has happened in our city in the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, I cannot help but see some parallels. There are some people that look at what has happened in our city and they say things like, I didn't make the mess, why should I have to clean it up like they're damn teenagers? But then there's a whole lot of people that look at the list, the overwhelming list of things that needs to get done, and they are out there getting shit done. And it's impressive, and it's inspiring. But what I really hope is that when we finally clean up the mess, that we don't retreat to our separate corners and our separate communities. I really hope that we take time to listen to each other's stories by candlelight, because what we will find is that we have a whole lot in common, and that we need each other in each other's lives. That we are better off with each other in our communities, in our city, and in our world. Thank you.